Some time ago, I had an opportunity to hear a guy talk about dragons, but this guy was specialized in this type of knowledge, and he was talking about the subtle aspect of the dragon. That is, he's talking about the magic involved in this, let me say, in this symbol is the dragon, or this beast that would be this dragon. It's interesting because he was talking about the mystical aspect as well, and how to find your inner dragon as this symbol, as this inner entity to manifest powers in the real world. But the thing is that that made me wonder, because the dragon, since I was a boy, I was fascinated by the dragon. You see, when you see in movies, on stories and all that, there is this mythic being that would be the dragon. And it's interesting because I feel that I have a connection with the medieval time. But I'm saying that in a spiritual level because I think in an earlier life I lived at that time. Because I had an opportunity to visit such sites in Europe that are very important was very important in medieval times, and I had these feelings, while I was walking there, checking the sites, and those feelings were very strong. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the dragon itself, because, for example, if we're gonna do a simple definition, would be that the symbolism of dragons represents a powerful dichotomy between Eastern benevolence, prosperity, and cosmic order, and Western chaos, sin, and untamed nature. Throughout almost all of human traditions, these mythical beasts serve as the ultimate embodiment of primordial power, elemental mastery, and deep psychological transformation. And it's interesting because in the dragon we see these two sides that would be opposite sides. But it's interesting because the embodiment of those sides, they represent unification, unity. You know what I mean? That's interesting to think about. Because when I was a child, I was mesmerized and amazed by the power that the dragons represented back then. For example, we have Tiamat, we have all these great dragons in Japanese. For example, in Japanese animes, for example, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! With the great white dragon with the blue eyes and all that. In other dragons, we have that in like these movies that talk about medieval times. I'm fascinated by. For example, when I was a teenager, I used to play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and what was amazing. And the dragon would be sometimes the greatest opponent, the greatest villain to overcome because of its power. It's interesting. But as I felt that as a young man, now I see it a little deeper. Because when we go beyond those images and we look at the symbolism around it, it's very powerful actually. For example, in Eastern traditions, in Asian cultures, for example, the dragon is viewed as a sacred, auspicious creature. It's interesting because it represents power. In Eastern philosophy, for example, it could represent imperial authority. For example, the rulers, the emperors, would define themselves as dragons or descendants from dragons and all that. Or for example, it would be related to water and weather control, since these dragons, the Eastern dragons, would reside in rivers, lakes, and clouds, governing rainfall and agricultural prosperity. It could be seen as also as spiritual wisdom. For example, in Buddhism, dragons or nagas would act as fierce guardians of the Dharma. The Dharma would be the way of the Buddhist teachings, and it would symbolize also deep spiritual illumination. Interesting to think about that. Actually, I saw this before when I was studying Buddhism, and to see it now, to see it again now, it's very interesting. It's like a message coming through. I hope I understand it. But let's go on. In Eastern philosophies, it could also represent cosmic balance. The dragon, like I said before at the beginning, holds the both sides of the coin. The yang represents the male active energy, and the yin, that would be the marital bliss and universal harmony. But on the other hand, in Western philosophies, we see a different approach. In Western philosophy, the dragon would be related to chaos and conflict, representing this fearsome predatory adversary. In medieval times, for example, it would be the embodiment of the monsters of the Christian theology, seen in Revelation and all that. Or would be the epic end of a hero's journey, such as Beowulf, that fights to be himself. Or it could be also a representation of greed and materialism, since the Western dragons would be these hoarders that was the guardians of this great treasure residing in deep caves. But when we go further, when we see this symbol, we understand that it has impacts in psychology and in the alchemy. It's interesting because, for example, in Jungian psychology, which is a psychology I work with the mandalas, fighting a dragon represents an individual confronting their subconscious mind, conquering internal fears, and taming destructive primal instincts. And for example, other psychological aspect would be the guarded treasures. That would be the main reward, psychologically speaking, that would be kept inside oneself and should be achieved from facing what one fears most. And the dragon would be also a symbol of in the alchemy and rebirth, of alchemy and rebirth. For example, in alchemical traditions, the dragon signifies prima materia, prime matter. Its ability to consume itself, as the Ouroboros, the snake, eating its own tail, or burn things to ash, symbolize the cycles of destruction, purification, and spiritual rebirth. When you see all that, and when I'm drawing this blue dragon with white eyes here, with white eyes, it makes me wonder, because one thing is to know in theory something, and the other thing is to reach the experience. I said it before and now I repeat it, but in a different context. For example, I'm manifesting with my hands that symbol. There are other aspects such as the color, and all that, but let's focus on the dragon itself. For some time now, the dragon has been in my surroundings. This idea of the dragon, some time ago I watched this movie about a little boy training his dragon, but not in a sense of an slavery, to turn the dragon into his slave, but he has his best friend, so they can ride together and fly and be free. And that image is very appealing, You have a friend that you can fly with. And when we go back to the beginning, when I said that there is this inner dragon, the source of power, the greatest and real treasure inside of each and every one of us, this treasure of consciousness, if I could say so, that would be the image ultimately, that is to find this power and fly with it. And that's the message of today. Let us find that power. Let us train it. Let us become one with it. Because as humans, we have those capacities. Since we manifest it in the material world to symbols and images, we can manifest that power within ourselves, from where all of that came from in the first place. And in there, we can find the freedom to fly and to be one. And when I say that everything is mandala, I'm returning to the point where everything merges. The point itself is the integral interpretation, the integral manifestation, but not a manifestation, but a state of everything there is. The yin and the yang in complete harmony, moving and not moving at the same time. The flow of existence in every breath. The inner search for the true hero. A path of each and every one of us. After all, everything is mandala.